No, it's a cake. It's definitely a cake. I know people can say pumpkin pie and things like that, and that's consistent. Sometimes they don't have a topping. No, but no, it's a damn cake. All right.
Welcome to Perfusion Rockstars, episode 1 with Luke Boganny. We appreciate Luke being here today. During Perfusion Rockstar interviews, our goal is to find out their experience, their background professionally, and also dig a little deeper and find out what makes them tick. So thanks for being with us today, Luke. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Especially on July 3rd during the pandemic 2020. So we're officially on a federal holiday as well. So we appreciate your time. So Luke, he went to Perfusion School in Charleston at Medical University of South Carolina, started in 2009 and graduated in 2011. Upon graduation, he took his perfusion career to Arkansas, where he worked until 2015 as a staff perfusionist. And then in 2015, he became the chief perfusionist in Asheville, North Carolina, and has been doing that up until the present time. Luke, his professional proficiencies, when I look over what he has accomplished and been exposed to and mastered, there's not much on the list. He's done about everything from complex aortic procedures to plasmapheresis, plasma exchange, VADS, ECMO, angiovac, I think about just about everything. So you've had a very extensive, complete perfusion career. With that, we'd like to dive in a little bit. Todd has some questions we'd like to start with.
All right, Luke.
Fire away.
Great. So obviously we just, kind of heard what's on the resume, but I'd like to kind of dive in a little deeper on what was your life like before perfusion and how did you kind of get into the profession?
So before perfusion, I was still in the medical field, but in a very different area. I was a GI tech for a couple of years, and because I knew I wanted to get in, and I figured that'd be a good way to kind of segue into healthcare. And then I also got my EMT license, and I never actually practiced it because that's when I got into school. So I got into school right before I started doing that, and then I just took off. And once you're in perfusion school, you can't really do anything else. That's it. You've got to buckle down and just go to school and try to survive.
How'd you hear about perfusion?
So MUC had one of these College of Healthcare Profession open house seminars, and everybody from all the different disciplines showed up and gave their spiel: physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, the CRNA program, and PA, physician assistant program. And then I didn't know him at the time, but it was Joe Sestino, and he stood up and looked really disheveled. I mean, he had blood on his jacket, his hair was crazy, and he stood up and was like, I just did this congenital heart defect repair on this kid, and he gave, Joe talks, and he gave this big spiel, and he's like, if anyone wants to follow me, just come this way, and we're going to do another procedure. And no one stood up and went, and I couldn't believe it. And so I stood up and said, yeah, I would like to see that. If I could just go into an operating room, here I am, Joe Schmo, sitting there. And he took me into the OR. I had to wear this like triple extra large paper suit, and we sat down in there, and he was doing all sorts of math equations like on his pant legs, just writing them out. And I just thought it was really cool. I couldn't believe it. And I asked him what I had to do to get accepted to the program. I just needed a couple more prerequisites. So I went to school and got the rest of the prerequisites and applied the next fall, got in, and the rest is history.
Great. So, it seems like Joe Sestino kind of helped you get into the field, but is there anyone that you think of that had a big influence on your professional career as a perfusionist?
Yeah, there's two people I would have to say. Probably when I was on rotation, the chief of perfusion at the Greenville Memorial Health System, Davis Gerald, he was a pretty big influence. I went there, and immediately you could tell some people just command that respect, and he was easygoing, but wasn't, he wasn't a real hard ass or anything. He was just this really calm, cool, collected guy that when he spoke, everyone listened, and he had a way of cutting through the tension of a situation, but commanding a lot of respect. And he just knew so much about perfusion. Uh, he remembers, you guys don't remember Jeff Excel, but Jeff Excel was a professor. Now he's a perfusionist at MUSC, and he's probably the smartest guy I've ever met. And, Jeff Excel was a student when Davis Gerald was there, and he's been doing it for a long time. So I was pretty impressed with him, and I wanted to emulate him in any way possible when I got into the field. The other guy was the first guy that gave me my job, a fellow by the name of Sean Welch. He taught me all the ins and outs of perfusion, from the business to clinical, but he really took me under his wing and just showed me what it really was all about. And I still keep in touch with him today. So those are two pretty influential figures.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Now, do you have a couple questions for Luke?
Sure. So ideal day, you go to the hospital and they say, okay, Luke, or maybe you're in charge and you make the schedule, but either way, would you prefer to go sit the 12-hour ECMO shift in the unit, or would you prefer to go into the operating room and do a case?
It depends on what day of the week it is. If it's a Monday, let me go and do my case. But honestly, I think the key to happiness in this profession is mixing it up a little. You want to avoid that redundancy and repetitiveness. So if I could do an ECMO shift, plus usually people will get ECMO pay, so everyone's clamoring to do an ECMO shift here or there, so because Christmas is coming up or something. But sitting ECMO affords you the ability to see healthcare from the patient side and see what all the nurses do, and you're up there. So it's different from sitting behind the pump, and you get to sit there and you realize you're interacting also, with the ECMO, but the patients, and you realize what you're hooked up to. It's this patient, and you spend 12 hours with them, and so you really form a relationship with the patient and whatever family members are walking around. So it's a different angle at our profession, and so it's something nice as opposed to just sitting in the OR. The patient's asleep. You don't interact with anybody else as far as that's concerned. So I like both aspects of it. I like doing both.
Okay. Well, like you've said in the past, you and I've discussed before, you like the idea of finding out what happens to the patient after surgery,
Right.
And learn more about that. And I think that, as you were saying, helps you in the operating room make decisions based on what happens post-op. And so it's nice to get the full experience. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prepare for a difficult case? And I guess it depends on whether you have time or not to prepare for it, but
that's the key. Sometimes you don't have time to prepare, but if you do, it's nice to kind of just sit down for a second. If you can meditate, if you can grab 30 cc's of coffee and slug it down and go through the game plan in your head and think, all right, look, we're going to do some circ arrest. What do I need to cool to? When do I turn off my LV vent? And you kind of run through the procedure in your head. And if you can have time to do that before the case, you can anticipate what you're going to expect as opposed to react to what happens. And you're always better off anticipating, knowing what's happening in the surgery, knowing when to make certain interventions and when to not. So I like to, if I have time, run through it in my head and ask questions. Talk to the surgeon before the case if you can. Talk to anesthesia before the case. Find out as much as you can about the patient that you're going to get. And as G.I. Joe used to say, knowing is half the battle. And that's what I try to do.
All right. So G.I. Joe is one of your heroes as well, Tim.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Totally.
Speaking of G.I. Joe, what are your perfusion superpowers?
Well, since we're on 80s television, I would like to feel like I'm sort of, now I wasn't always, but like the MacGyver of perfusion. If there's a situation I feel like I can walk into a room and quickly assess or troubleshoot what's going on, either with whether it's the equipment or whether it's something going on clinically with the patient. Um, just yesterday, we had a heater cooler that was giving this weird alarm, and I've had that happen before, and I realized it was the internal temperature probe in the heater cooler, and we had to take it out of the room and change it out. I called the company, had to get the part number and create an invoice, send it off so we could have a new one shipped and get to the hospital by Monday. And I've also replaced them, so I know how to take the heater cooler apart and put this, good piece of equipment back into it. And that's just one little thing. There's computer glitches, there's all sorts of gremlins that live in the OR. And so if I had to say that was my superpower, it's being able to walk in and try to fix something really quickly. And if I can't, just make the decision to get it out of there and get something that works in. So
Great.
I'd say that's pretty valuable.
Yeah,
To
certainly
people.
certainly a superpower, because there's, like you said, there's always troubleshooting
always.
with all the different types of equipment, moving things in and out, and all the interaction between all the different devices and all the disciplines and in the operating room. Very complex. So that's great. A question, actually, it was a perfusionist, Sean, that has students ask him this question when they rotate through his hospital. I thought it was a great idea. And that is, how has your perception of perfusion changed over the years from the time you met Joe Sestino to today? And then what is the best and the worst part of your profession or being a perfusionist in your mind?
Certainly. I mean, for a couple of years, I didn't even know what perfusion was, even after I became a perfusionist. It was just, I was wide open, I was like, what is going on? And what has changed, at least my perception of it, is just the complexity of cases that we get now. I mean, and it was also where I first started, but when I first started, it was relatively simple kind of cabbages or some valves. And then throughout the years, the patients have just been getting older and older, sicker and sicker. We've moved to, I've now worked at a very, high acute center that we get, the only thing we don't do are transplants. So what I've seen is that we are operating on much more complex patients nowadays, and especially with this whole COVID pandemic going on, we're dealing with a lot more emergencies because they're not coming into the hospital when they should. About if how things, like the good things and bad things about perfusion. The good things, I feel like there's still a lot of job security. When I first started as a student, there's always this talk about, oh, it's all going to be automated. Oh, we won't have a need for perfusionists, in 5 years. And I mean, this was almost 10 years ago, and they were saying this, and that's so not true. There's still a huge demand for our profession, what we do. I think ECMO has opened that up tremendously. And there's a lot of people retiring in our profession. So that's a really good thing about perfusion, is there's still a big demand, and there's a good quality of life as far as the income that you can make. Some of the bad things about perfusion is that trying to find that quality, that life to work balance, that ratio, because it's really stressful at times. You're in situations and you need to be able to get out of there and just debrief and step away from it and then come back clear-headed. And if you don't find that balance, you can burn out. And I think that's a big thing in this profession that a lot of people don't really address. So you have to have an outlet.
All right, great.
So just something else. So if, let's say you run up to someone who wants to be a perfusionist, what's one thing you would tell them kind of to, I guess, to prepare for, if they said, hey, I want to be a perfusionist? What is one thing you would tell them?
Learn how to hold your bladder for quite a long time. But honestly, I would tell them to look at all the programs. I would encourage them, and I mean, you have to shadow, but I would encourage them to even shadow a perfusionist before they even apply, because you really want to get a sense of what it's like working in the OR. And I would let them know that usually you have to move to where you want to work. So if somebody wants to live in Charleston and, go to perfusion school and that's where they want to stay, they have to really know that that's probably won't be a possibility for a while. They have to move to where they can get a job, and have to know if they're okay with taking call and all that stuff. But otherwise, I would encourage them to go. I mean, this is the time to go to school and get out and graduate. I mean, there are jobs to be had.
Yep.
So much better than when I got out. You took whatever you could find.
Yeah. Great, because I think it's such a great profession, and I think that it's not as well known, obviously, since it's a smaller profession. And I've talked to a lot of people my age, and I've told them about it, and they say, "Why haven't I heard of this? It sounds like such a great profession." And I think it's good. Hopefully, we can bring light to people, and they can see that this is such a great field to be in, and it's a good time, like you said, to graduate.
It is
time to be a perfusionist. So now I'd like to kind of dive into Luke a little more outside the OR. We've heard about you in the OR. We know that you're a very experienced perfusionist. You're good at what you do. But so just for starters, we are Perfusion Rockstars, and you're a Perfusion Rockstar. So what kind of music do you like? What's your favorite band? What's your favorite genre? What do you think?
I would have to say that it all depends on where you are at the time, where I am. If I'm in the OR and it's a complex case, gangster rap is always a go-to for me. It will give me the confidence to get through it all. I've become nostalgic, and all the 90s rock stuff is coming back, and I realized how good it was. I missed it. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Red Hot Chili Peppers, all that stuff. I like it. So I would have to say, if I'm driving in my car and like I hear something from like the 90s, I'm staying there. I'm holding on to it.
Okay. Well, great.
Good.
And so I know that this time around, I know you have a couple kids, and what do you like to do in your spare time? You got any hobbies or anything like that you like to do?
Yeah, man. So obviously living here in the mountains, we try to get outside as much as we can. I just bought a canoe, and I'm gonna plop them in the canoe. Hopefully today at some point. We're going to go down the Swananoa River and try to catch some fish, or we're just try to stay alive, I think, for the first time. And then we'll probably go fishing.
Whitewater Rapids.
Yeah. And but so outside is obviously important to us. I just started playing the ukulele, and you just can't have a bad day when you're playing that thing, even if everyone's in a bad mood and the kids are crying. I strap that thing on, just start playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and they cheer right up.
Yeah.
So just
awesome.
Fun things like that. Just getting out, and because it is pretty consuming having all these kids. So it's tough having a hobby that's outside of them. You have to weave them into the fabric of your life, and so whatever you do, they're going to be a part of it, at least for the next 10 years.
And just to clarify, you obviously have your wife, one boy, and then twins,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all fairly close. I don't know what the gap is, but
So the twins are 2, and Henry is 5. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, and and then there's Molly and the dog, and it's all boys. She's surrounded by all boys, so
yeah.
my hat's off to her.
I'm not sure people are aware, but it is nice. Yeah, since you being in Asheville, I'm sure there's a lot of outdoor activities, a lot of water, a lot of trails and things like that. So it's good for what you like to do. Now something else. So let's say an author wants to publish a biography about Luke Boganny. What's the title gonna be?
Well, it'll have to go to court to see if they can release it, first of all. But I think pressure, flow, resistance, something like that, that would sum up professionally and personally what my life is like. And I think that would be a good title.
I know. I do like that title. Someone might take it from you.
I like the way
You could do it
professionally as well as personally. You have pressure. You need to keep flowing against the resistance of everyday life. So I love it.
There's very little resistance ever in life. I'm just kidding.
You can always take the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
like blood.
Just ukulele all day. So now someone takes that book. This is the best-selling book, and they're going to make a movie. Who's going to play Luke in the movie?
Well, I think Brad Pitt is too tall to play me, but probably Robert Downey Jr. or Jake Gyllenhaal. You know, probably those guys. And the only reason I say that is because one time somebody came up to me and was like, "Man, you know who you are?" I was like, "Who am I?" And he's like, "You're Robert Downey Jr." And I was like, "Okay." So that's why I
You know
say
who
that.
you are.
Yeah, it's like I know who I am.
I like it. I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So now, a little surprise. We're gonna do a little lightning round.
Okay.
Editor Sam, I want to do a little timer. And we see how quickly you can get through this, and then we can go back and we can kind of dive deeper in. Does that sound good?
Okay. I like it.
All right. So let's go. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Okay. Pirates or ninjas?
I'd have to say ninjas, although, you know, I can relate to pirates quite a bit.
Okay. Favorite TV show?
Knight Rider.
Do you believe in aliens?
Absolutely.
Is a cheesecake a pie or a cake?
A cheesecake is still a cake.
Okay. And then I know you live in the mountains, but beach or mountains?
For the rest of my life, if I had to pick one, I'd probably go for the beaches. I like the water.
Yeah, me too. All right. So thanks for answering those. You seem to know your
Absolutely.
answers pretty quickly. So hot dog. It's not a sandwich.
No, hot dog is more of a meat taco kind of situation because the bread kind of folds around it and encompasses it. And you kind of eat it almost like a taco or a missile. You know, it's kind of.
I like it. And then ninjas over pirates. I personally agree. I'm a ninjas guy over pirates as well.
Right.
What's your method?
Yeah, I mean, ninjas, you know, they're sneaky, they're quiet, you don't know they're there until you're dead. I kind of think Perfusion is the same way without all the killing, but we kind of go in there and if we do a good job, you never know we were there. And that's we're just kind of hopefully we live in the dark and we just kind of creep out, keep you alive, and then boom, we're off, and your heart starts beating, and no one has to know that you were ever there.
Great.
That's why I like it.
I like it. And then
that ties into my stealth perfusion.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right.
You're good at what you do. You go in, you come out. No one knows you were there. Flawless.
Yeah, when the spotlight is shining on you as a perfusionist, typically it's not a good thing. So that's
right.
And then you got Knight Rider.
Yeah, man. David Hasselhoff all the way, baby. I mean, this guy's a legend. That car is still pretty kick-ass. I mean, if you saw one of those, the Trans Am, if you saw one of those today on the road, it's still a head turner, and it was way ahead of its time. So, I mean, and the music, God, the theme song. I don't know if you guys remember it, but I mean, I do.
Yeah, that technology in the car, right? I mean, that was
the kit. Oh man,
it was a little before my time, but
little.
You guys can remember.
Well, now you know what you need to binge watch.
Yeah,
seriously, it'll change your life.
Okay, I'll try it out then. So aliens. You obviously said you believe in aliens.
Yeah, I mean, without question. I mean, with all the life out there, I mean, there's just mathematically impossible for there not to be more life out there in this universe. I mean, I'm not bold enough to think that we're the only creatures out there in this big void of space. I think that I don't know if it's teeming with life, but I'm fairly certain we're not alone.
Yeah, I agree with that. So cheesecake is a cake. It's not a pie. Why is it a cake, Luke?
Well, you can't just fall back on the thing that it says cheesecake right there. I mean, it's not like it's loaded with cheese. At least the kind of cheese that I thought was cheese back in the day. But first of all, a pie has to have a filling and then a top, like a crust on the top. So the cheesecake is a consistent, it just has that consistency all the way through. So when you cut into it, it's a cake, So There's no way you can get around that. Now, I mean, I know there's no, it's a cake. It's definitely cake. I know people can say pumpkin pie and things like that, and that's consistent. Sometimes they don't have a topping. No, but no, it's a damn cake. All right.
I like you sticking to your guns.
Hmm.
And then you know you said you like the beach.
Yeah. Well, I grew up there. I grew up in Charleston. The beach is it's always been just second nature to me. And so I love the mountains up here. I love it. But definitely the beach has my heart. It'll always draw me to it. I mean, and when I get old and retire, the beach is where I want to be. And that's just how I see it.
Are you a wave guy? Do you like waves?
Um,
You-
I used to like waves. Now I just like listening to waves. Uh, I, and for me, the beach, I'm really thinking of like the marsh and the low country, like the other side of the island. I like going, paddling around there. Um,
Okay.
that's what I really enjoy. I used to love getting in the water when I was a kid, but now jumping into the water at the beach, now I worry about all the undertows and currents and all the creatures in the ocean that will get you. So
You watch Shark Week.
You sound like a
yeah, Shark Week. Ever since Shark Week came out, I'm like, man, I better get not.
yeah.
That's too much going on. But I'll sit at the beach and watch it and watch my kids run around and drink a couple of beers. And to me, that's about as good as it can get.
Yeah, that sounds pretty sweet. So I mean, that was it for our questions. Do you have anything else you'd like for us to ask, or any last thoughts you had that you maybe thought of throughout this process that you'd like to share?
Man, you guys have done a great job. I think that you guys are the real rock stars. That's I'm just here talking, which I could do all day. I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. So, you keep it up. Keep getting more accounts. Keep plugging away.
Thanks, Luke. We need to grow our hair longer, I guess, for the Rockstar piece.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you and I have talked about in the past, and I know it's important to you, is integrity.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
You
man.
talked about the importance of, when you're behind the pump, sort of making decisions as if no one's watching, because a lot of times no one is watching.
Right.
That just
Right.
has stuck with me.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, you know, doing the right thing when no one is watching and not having to, brag about it. I mean, you don't get a gold medal in perfusion. You don't get the glory. You don't get all of this, these accolades that if if you feel like that's what you deserve, you should not be a perfusionist. I mean, you get paid. That's your reward. But at the end of the day, you're doing it and you're keeping this patient alive. You're optimizing them to the best of your ability. So you're giving them a really good chance when they come off a bypass to have a successful outcome. And so doing the right thing back there could be as little as just alcohol swabbing a drug port before put drugs in. It could be these minute things that we look over every day as, oh, that's just, I'm not gonna, it's so tiny, I'm not going to worry about that. But do the right thing every time. If you see something wrong, let somebody know in the OR. If you see something that anesthesia is doing, or if somebody contaminates something, so often we just don't want to get yelled at by the surgeon. But if you see anything, just let people know and just do the right thing. It'll help you professionally and personally. I had to learn that a lot when I was in high school. There was a dean of students that always talked about integrity. That was his big word, and it took 4 years for that to really sink in until the end. And but it really, in this profession, when you're not constantly being supervised, because we don't have a physician like CRNAs will have a doc watching over them. PAs have the physician right there watching over them. We really kind of are back there operating the most lethal machine, to be honest, in the hospital. And so if we are not paying attention to that, you could really make a very critical mistake. Um, and so it's very important that you do the right thing, even when no one's watching. And
Well, that's a great note, I think, to end on. Do the right thing. We'll send that
do the
out
right thing, man.
into the community, into the world, the message. And
Yeah.
again, we really appreciate your time today. I know you're a busy guy between your personal and professional life. And thank you very much for being #1 rock star.
Yeah,
First episode, and
that's right.
being the guinea pig, and really do appreciate that.